Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Dafuq Did I Just Watch? With your host, as always, Kyle McLemore. This week we'll be talking about the 2022 film Firestarter, based on the Stephen King novel of the same name, starring Zac Efron and Kiera Armstrong. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It definitely helps the show keep going, and we appreciate any comments of any movies or TV shows you'd like us to review here at Dafuq. If you haven't already and would like to see the movie, please pause now and return later, as there will be plenty of spoilers ahead. That's right, this is your official spoiler alert. We're going to be talking all things Firestarter, the book, the 1984 adaptation, and the newest 2022 version. Let's go ahead and start with the book. Being that I am a huge Stephen King fan, I have read the book. It's been a while. I don't remember a ton. I remember there being a very strange relationship between the main character, Charlie, and John Rainbird, who is like this Native American, gnarly, insane assassin. So that's basically mostly what I also remember the book slamming into a wall when they get captured, and they spend months in this government facility, and it's the book really slams into a wall and it just hits the brakes really hard out of nowhere, and it's kind of boring from what I remember, but then it picks up with her breaking out and burning everyone and everything. Going into Firestarter, the newest one, I was pretty excited. I checked the runtime before I went in, and it went at about an hour and 34 minutes. So I knew going in that they had really cut out the fat. I'm talking, they really chopped out all the fat of this movie and left almost no room for character development or even a chance to really feel that much of an attachment to the main character, Charlie. There's also this weird, you can't really tell who's the main character. Is it her dad or is it her? I feel like the main character should have been Charlie for the most part, but I mean, she doesn't really have a lot of time to develop in the movie. She is either crying or screaming. She gets a little training montage in the forest. They cut it. Okay, so first I was excited. Like I mentioned before in the book, it slows down a lot. They get captured and they basically spend a lot of time in this government facility, which is also true of the 1984 adaptation, where they also get captured and spend quite some time at this facility, and it's a little bit boring. So going in knowing that it would be only an hour and a half long, I knew for sure that they would have to cut out a lot of fat, and they do. They basically slice out the entire part where they get captured. Well, I guess in this adaptation, only her dad is captured. Charlie gets away and spends her time in the forest, basically doing a little Rocky training. Eye of the tiger. It's the eye of the tiger. I can burn that stuff, yeah. It's the eye of the tiger. I can burn that tree down. I'm not sure if the middle of a thick wooden forest is the best place to be doing your pyrotechnic practicing, but hey, I mean, she gets to practice in, and she's a master of firebending by the time she comes out. Comparing other things to David Keith and Zac Efron, David Keith, the character Andy Mcgee in this movie has telekinesis powers, or as he calls it, the push, where he can kind of get other people to do whatever he wants. In the 84 version, David Keith was always doing this really intense, now you're going to shoot your partner, really straining his brain. Whereas this Zac Efron version is kind of a little bit less dramatic and kind of cool. He just kind of does this, cracks his neck and then gets all intense. Also in the 84 version, he was just dumping blood out of his nose. This version, he's dumping blood out of his eyes. The same but different. A little bit of improvement, I feel like. It's way better that he just does his little focusing instead of just really grabbing his head all over the top like David Keith. Other things too, they really slice out the whole beginning. There's in the original adaptation, they show you the whole, he's in college, we're going through this little placebo experiment thing. Everyone's freaking out because they're tripping and they're half psychic. They do a great job at the beginning of the newest one, 2022, where basically that whole beginning of them in college being experimented on, it's all done in the credits. So you're getting the opening credits interspliced with interviews with them being experimented on, and you also get the splices of people freaking out. The guy rips his eyes out. Really, really strong beginning to this movie. But in a way, it kind of suffers from them cutting so much fat. They do a great job of cutting out all the fat, but an unfortunate side effect is that you get this kind of jerky motion where it's like, spoiler alert, the mom gets killed, and it's just like, boom, we're moving, let's go. Like, no time to grieve. I don't think there's any grieving time for the mom at all. There's like a little spot where they're like saying a prayer for a cat, and they're just like, and for mom too, I guess. Like, yeah. Wanted to talk about our newest actress, Kiera Armstrong, and her comparison to her predecessor, Drew Barrymore, who, say what you want about the original 1984 movie, I feel like one of the things you can't say is that Drew Barrymore wasn't good in it. I mean, being that she's like basically 8, 9, or 10, I don't know, it's hard for me to judge kids' ages, but knocks it out of the park being so young. Kiera Armstrong. Is it weird that I totally prefer Drew Barrymore's performance? I feel like she totally was better, but then I feel like it's because there's so much fat cut off. Like I said about not being able to develop the character much, you don't get a huge attachment to this version of Charlie. And like I said, you basically either see her crying, screaming, or just being like moody, whereas Drew Barrymore, you get like a full range of her emotions throughout the entire movie because it's longer and it takes a little bit more of its time. And it helps you develop the character more. With this one, it just feels a lot more rushed. She does her little training in the forest alone, and it's like, all right, I guess you're master of pyrokinesis now, so that's pretty awesome. One of the most dynamic differences being from the 84 adaptation and the newest one is the character John Rainbird, who in this new 2022 version was actually played by an actual Native American. So it's like, all right, we got an actual Native American guy to play the Native American guy instead of John C. Scott, motherfucking, you guys got General S. Patton or fucking General S. Patton to play a fucking Native American, and like, yeah, it's just this fucking old white guy, but give him a quick little spray tan and a fucking ponytail, and there's your 80s Native American, I guess. So it's really great that this newest interpretation of John Rainbird is played by Michael Greyeyes. Greatest last name ever, Michael Greyeyes. Fantastic last name. Michael Greyeyes, giving a good performance as Rainbird. I mean, he's actually Native American, which is like, plus, yeah. But then again, I mean, everything suffers from the short runtime where it's just rush, rush, rush. Rainbird shows up with like, all right, we hired you to kill this girl. And so he's hunting them down, and then basically off screen gets like a change of heart from getting blasted by her fire. Like, it suddenly inspires him to help free her, and there's not a lot of consistency with the book. It's interesting that the 84 version would be so much more accurate to the book, with this newest one cutting out so much, but then they really just throw everything to the wind almost. There's a whole arc in the book about Rainbird basically going like undercover as like a stupid janitor to try to gain her trust, and it's just this, he's playing the long con. In this one, he's a janitor for like 5 seconds at the beginning. That's just like his new job, and until they call him back, it's like, hey, don't be a fucking janitor anymore. We need you to come kick some ass. Click. So, interesting. It's very different. I don't want to spoil a huge amount of it, but his performance, I mean, they don't give him a lot to do, but his performance is cool, and it is fantastic to have an actual Native American dude playing a Native American guy like it, finally. There are little things in the newest adaptation that are better. For example, the original mother and wife, played by Heather Locklear, who in the original 80 version dies off screen and is hardly in the movie at all. Like, you just fall in love with her, and then she just is dead the rest of the movie. This time it's played by Sydney Lemon, and we actually get a little bit of a taste of like her telekinesis powers. There's like a little fight that she's having with Rainbird, but yeah, you get to see like her little telekinesis powers, so that's cool. It's the part where you'd think that they would improve, right? It's where the mom originally had some telekinesis powers in the original, but they didn't really dip a toe into that in the original movie. But in this one, it's like, all right, we did a little peek into like, more effects. She's blowing shit off the walls, and that's what you want, right? I mean, this is all basically we're all seeing the movie to see Charlie freak out at the end, right? When she goes ballistic and just burns the whole facility down right at the end. That's what we're all buying our tickets for. In the original 80s adaptation, it is a fantastic climax. You get the real lull of them being like captured and kind of slows down, and then it peaks back up when she starts going on her rampage. And even though it's 1984, you watch the finale of the original Firestarter and tell me you are not entertained as shit, because there is amazing stunt work going on, and with the amazing pyrokinesis effects, it is great. Although it does look like a weird Super Mario fireball that she's blasting, the explosions and the stuntmen flying like their bodies, you can tell it's a real dude flailing, and all these guys who are like, you can tell have some kind of suit on, they all look like they have their fucking Michael Myers face on. But you can tell it's real guys rolling around in fire. So being that it's in the 80s, a fantastic climax, and doing what they could with the effects that they had, they went above and beyond and really gave a hell of a final climactic scene. Flip side, flipping it over to the 2022 version, that's all I was excited for, was her to finally tear down the compound at the end. There's this awesome part of the book I've always been a fan of, where they're all shooting at her and she has so much heat that they're just basically like melting before they get to her. And they do that. They do that in the 80s. Like, they do it in the 80s adaptation where they're shooting and she's just fucking, I mean, it looks shitty 80s CGI bullets, but she's doing it where she's deflecting them and it looks awesome. And it's very cool. Not once does she melt a bullet in this movie. Not once does anyone fire at her. I think they're just like, freeze! And then like she just lights them on fire before they can pull the trigger. So the entire movie, I'm basically looking forward to the huge climax at the end. This is the new 2022 version, 40 years after the original. So you know that the technology is on point. We have the ability to make awesome CGI fire. We have the ability to do all kinds of effects that nobody could even dream of back in the 80s. But tell me why the 1984 version is so much more satisfying to watch, because she really burns that place down. And this one, it's like she does a quick little walk through, 1, 2, 3, couple guys, and then she's actually about to like lose. Like, she's like Drew Barrymore in the 80s. Like, there's dudes with fire suits, and she's blowing them like football stadiums like away. This one, she's almost defeated. Like, they have her surrounded, and it's not until, she's rescued by Rainbird. Very, very different, almost anticlimactic, I would say. A huge positive to the 2022 version is that the music score is done by the legend himself, Mr. John Carpenter, who, interesting trivia, was originally set to direct the 1984 adaptation of this movie. But at the time, the movie The Thing flopped super hard, which is a interesting sentence to say out loud, that a movie so amazing as The Thing flopped at the box office. But due to that flop, he was kind of booted off the director's seat for this movie. But it's kind of cool to see him come full circle around and do the music for the newest version. And let me tell you, the music is on point. The music was phenomenal this entire movie. He has a fantastic way of making this very, very ominous tone, and then just like sprinkling this haunting piano on top of it. Just this little ding, like very Halloween-esque, but in a totally different way. It is very haunting, very cool, sets the tone, gives it this weird 80s vibe the whole time. And the entire end credit scene, it might as well be out of like John Carpenter's book. Like, it might as well be the end of like the original Halloween. Like, it's just hard to explain. It's one of those things where the scene keeps going. Like, it's just a shot of the beach with like the credits just rolling on top of it. Really great, really throwbacky kind of feel, that with the music. It gives it like a weird kind of like 80s vibe to it, in a good way. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to slap it with our final review. Let's go ahead and push it with our minds. Firestarter 2022 gets a 4 out of 10. That's right, not the greatest adaptation. If you want to be really entertained, I'd say the 1984 version is superior. It holds up pretty good. You get a far better climax at the end, in my opinion. It's a shame that with so much technology and advances in special effects that so little are used. Also, with so much fat cut off and such a little runtime that you don't get a lot of time to develop and really even care about these characters. Like by the time everything's going down, you're just like, not really attached to this guy, so don't really care if he dies or not. And the big climax at the end is honestly a little anticlimactic. It's a shame. It was close on this one. High hopes on this one. Like I said, 40 years after like the original, you would think that they'd have plenty of time to really give this one the love and tenderness that it deserves. I mean, this would be a big one, like one of the first superheroes. It's a shame. It's a shame that it wasn't better. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment any movies or shows you'd like us to review here at Dafuq. As always, I'm Kyle McLemore, your host, and we'll see you next time on Dafuq.